of our vice presidents of action, and you'll be seeing her later because we have action to take care of tonight. So this is our agenda, just real quickly. As normally do, I'll start with a few updates and talk through some key dates for the second quarter. And then I have the pleasure of introducing one of our board members, Sherry, who will lead the panel discussion and the majority of our evening tonight. And then back to Rachel for action. Before I get on with updates, I do this every month. How many of you have never been to one of our Now chapter meetings before? Never? So obviously, we all welcome you, and I want to just quickly run through what Now is. So you've heard about Now, right? National Organization for Women. So we exist to support equal rights for women. And the slide shows the 6 core issues that our national organization prioritizes. So they should sound familiar and sound important to all of us, right? Reproductive rights, constitutional equality, also known as the Equal Rights Amendment, economic justice, which includes things like equal pay, employment rights for pregnant workers, like that, ending violence against women. But then, of course, it is a very intersectional organization. And so racial justice and LGBTQIA+ rights are a key part of the organization's priorities. We don't have time to go into detail on each one of these, but the QR code will take you to the webpage for the national organization that goes into a little more information on each one of these. I'll come back to this in a quick second. So, what has happened since we were last together? The whole month of March, which was really busy for us. We had a town hall on the cost of being a woman. We had our annual meeting, which I know all of us that were there remember fondly. And we had No Kings. So it was a very busy week or month. So I just want to share some of the photos. It was a full house. It was essentially standing room only for our meeting. We had fun in the form of our fundraiser. These are volunteers that took care of our silent auction bags as well as our treat bags, whether it was wine or sweet treats. And our keynote speaker was Kim Villanueva, who is president of the national organization. And she enlightened us. I had no idea, so maybe Jean knew, but I did not know that the National Organization of Women was founded by a lot of Wisconsin activists. So our history is woven throughout the national organization, which was really cool to hear. At the annual meeting, we elected 3 new board members. I don't know if Ann is here, but Sherry is our Director of Education and Outreach, and you'll be hearing more from her soon. Dory, where are you, Dory? Standing up and back is our Corresponding Secretary. So when you get emails from Appleton Area Now, Dory's the force behind those. And then Ann Larson is our new treasurer, and she works from home, but home is up in Hobart, close to the Green Bay Airport. So when she comes, she's often late. I'm expecting to see her, but anyway. So we welcome our new board members. It's wonderful having their new energy on the board. We miss our departing board members, but it's good to have that kind of turnover. So here's some new dates for second quarter for your calendars. Our May meeting will be on the 19th. Previously, and on our postcards, we've communicated the 18th, so just be aware it's the 19th because we couldn't get a room on the 18th. It will be here in the Appleton Library, the same time, 5:45 to 7:30. But I wasn't aware, maybe you aren't aware, May is Menstrual Health Awareness Month. So we will be talking about period poverty, the Monthlies Project, and what that nonprofit is doing to help this crisis, as well as what our chapter is doing to address the pink tax, which is the sales tax on period products within the state. So I'm going to just tease you with that information. Come on May 19th to learn more. And we will be doing a donation drive for the Monthlies Project at that meeting. June 6th, we are planning another town hall. The topic will be primarily around reproductive rights, but we want to broaden the discussion to all health care for women. So we want to protect care and protect choice for women. So our details are still coming together. I do know it will be at the Nina Library, 12:30 start time. Rachel's doing all the detail work, so she's helping me out with nodding.
That one's on a Saturday?
Yes, it's a Saturday. Because our town halls typically are longer, and that gives us more flexibility. And then the other dates you might want to have in your calendar are for our Feminist Fellowship meetings, April 27th, which is a Monday, and Thursday, May 28th. Both of those will be in the Menasha Library. And that's just a chance to get together as a friendly group, talk about whatever we want to talk about. If you want to bring something to keep your hands busy, as in knitting or crocheting or painting rocks, feel free, but it's not required. Anyway, it is what it sounds like, a chance for fellowship. So earlier I talked about the 6 priorities of the national organization. We are celebrating the 60th anniversary of the National Organization for Women all year long. That is why we had the town hall on the cost of being a woman. The national organization has identified one of the priorities for each quarter of this year to focus on. So second quarter is protecting care, protecting choice. So revolving around reproductive rights, but as I've said earlier, we want to expand the discussion. Third quarter is, as it says, securing rights, shaping the future. So it's very much around the Equal Rights Amendment and equal rights for all. And then ending gender violence, ending violence against women is the fourth quarter. So we are already talking about and cooking up interesting and different events for those remaining 2 quarters after this quarter's town hall. So all of what we're doing will be focused around lifting up and listening to stories from all women, from all walks of life on these issues. Okay, so with that, I am going to turn this over to Sherry. So as I mentioned earlier, Sherry is Director of Education and Outreach, new to the board, but she has a background in organizational effectiveness and organizational development, and that makes her the perfect person to put on this panel and others in the future. So,
Yep. Is that my other duties as assigned?
Is that in the Bible?
I don't know.
So this is Sherry.
All right, thank you. Well, I almost said good morning. That would have rocked your world. I know. All right, are we good? Yeah. It's lovely to see the crowd. Isn't it? Awesome. So my next question. Are you ready? Are you ready? So here's how it's going to work. This lovely group of panelists has been given some questions, some which they shared they want to talk about, others which we sort of crafted for them. I've got about 4 rounds. What I'm going to do is get through about 2. Brody. Then I'm going to pause and let you whatever's in your cup. And I'm going to turn it to you to have questions. Is that fair? We'll give them a break. So if something sparks you and you have a question, maybe write it down. We'll give you guys a moment, let them ask. I have questions for them. We're going to kind of work our way through after round 4. We'll also open up for more questions. Does that sound like a plan?
Good.
All right. We're going to start with Megan. Here's what I want everybody to do. I asked them to each briefly introduce themselves and share one thing that you think you want anyone to take away from the session tonight.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Megan Pickett. I am a professor at Lawrence University. I'm a professor of physics. I went to school in New York and Indiana, and I worked at NASA before coming to Lawrence. So I've been at Lawrence since my 20th year.
Wow.
The central lesson, or central thing that I would love for you to take home with you is that we all usually take each other at our words. That is, somebody says who they are, and we generally don't question beyond that. The only group of people for whom that seems to be okay are trans folks. And I would suggest, especially as a strategy, as an ally, to push back against people that start off with straw man arguments like, can you define what? Would you like to go with my question, or would you just go going down the...
You just go to the introductions first.
Flags.
Yes, Daisy.
Hello. My name is Daisy Sinclair. I am the chair of Hate Free Outagamie. I've been with Hate Free Outagamie for about a year now, so it's kind of crazy that I'm chair. I did not go to college, whoops. But I do try to keep myself educated, specifically with trans issues, as I am quite selfish and they do affect me. So, as for takeaways from this, I would like specifically the non-trans people in the crowd to really internalize trans issues and really try to empathize with it a lot more, and hopefully be able to combat casual transphobia in your day-to-day life is what I ask of you.
Kristen Daynard. I actually live in Illinois right now, but I'm a Wisconsin native. I was born in Madison, went to grade school there for a while, then moved up to a little town called Partyville.
Goofy, we're clapping!
and went to college at UW Oshkosh. So I kind of, as a trans activist, I kind of float all over the place. I don't really belong to any one group. I just kind of Janelle got me, following this group. So I just kind of go wherever I can make a difference and speak, or just spread the word and stuff. So as far as profession, I work in the pharmaceutical industry, clinical trials. No, I don't have anything to do with hormones or human blood, but I work with oncology kind of drugs and collecting data and analyzing that for new drug applications. So I just thought I'd come up and I was invited to come up through Janelle and so glad to be here.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Helen Boyd. I'm originally from New York. Lawrence imported me. I'm not really sure how I wound up in Appleton, but here I am. And I've been doing work on behalf of and in the trans community for about 25 years now. So, including blogs, writing. Apparently, I'm currently TikTok viral, so that's good. I wish. But no, other than that, and I'm here mostly, I think what I want people to understand more than anything else is that transphobia is bad for everybody. I think we tend to think of transphobia as a problem for trans people, but the reality is anything that makes people examine who women are and what we look like and behave like is bad for all of us.
Hi, I'm Martha Marvel. I am the president of the Bay Area Council on Gender Diversity. retired almost 9 years ago, one of the first things I did was gather 3 other trans women to hide in the back storage room of the Napoli's Lounge, where we were safe and we could have a drink and swap war stories. We now have a contact list of over 900.
Wow.
And each month we have 100 people in 4 different groups on average to provide safe places where trans people can be their authentic selves. So there's so much more that we'd share as we get into the panel. One thing that I would hope that you come away from is to realize that to think that you're going to erase trans people is total folly. We have been here since the beginning of time, and you might as well try to erase left-handedness. It'll have the same effect. You just irritate people, but we'll continue to be here because you can't erase us. So you might as well figure out how to deal with us. And ideally, we're wonderful people. Welcome us.
Thank you. All right, Daisy, you ready?
You said yes, Sherry.
Yes, Sherry, I'm
All right. Can you share the different forms of transphobia can take, and maybe specifically addressing trans misogyny or how to combat it?
I sure can. So, transphobia, like any other form of hate, can take place in a lot of different forms, whether it be like peer-to-peer or like nationwide or like statewide, right? And when it comes to specifically trans misogyny, for those who don't know, trans misogyny refers specifically to the targeting of feminine features, specifically with trans women. A good example of this, let's say, small stuff like referring to a trans one as a biological man is a form of trans misogyny, or larger stuff like, let's take for example trans people depicted in the news or like in fiction. A lot of it is primarily targeted towards trans women. When we hear about like men and women's sports, that's targeted towards trans women. When we talk about men and women's bathrooms, that's again targeted towards trans women. These are just forms of trans misogyny. To speak for a personal example, last year I had to go to urgent care because I was having like chest pain and breathing issues, and I was talking to the nurse. They're like, we don't know what it is, right? And then I talked to the doctor at urgent care, and they told me that I was experiencing anxiety because I was taking estrogen. Turns out it was bronchitis. Just one of the many forms that trans misogyny can take, and this was just an individual example. This doesn't even go into like, of course, bathroom bans, which are huge and primarily target trans women, or another example would be the pressure for trans women to pass as cisgender women. For those who don't know, cisgender simply means not transgender. I'm not sure what the level of knowledge is here, so the pressure to pass as cisgender and trying to hide as many mannish, big air quotes there, features as possible, whether it be needing to like shave all the time or wear makeup or try to appear as feminine as possible to just try to counteract those mannish like aspects of ourselves.
Thank you. Before I go to Megan, does anyone on the panel have anything to add to that? All right, thank you, Daisy. Megan, I have a couple questions for you.
Good.
All right, from your lived experience, what does effective allyship actually look like in practice, and how does it differ from a well-intentioned but insufficient support?
Thank you for that question. So I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days, and because I'm a professor, I'm trying not to profess. We'll try and be brief, and in my brevity, I think that I can boil it down to 3 things, which is to effectively listen, speak, and act, in that order. So an effective ally is someone who listens to trans women. And of course, we're talking about trans women today, but this should apply for trans men, non-binary folks, the entire gender spectrum. But take, as I said at the top, take us at our word for our lived experience. Whether that be a few months, or in my case, I transitioned almost 25 years ago. So we know what we're talking about because we've experienced it. And if it seems odd, well, everybody's experience is odd. Don't speak for us, but help us to be heard. In other words, amplify our voices. This is really important these days in situations where it's difficult or dangerous for us to speak in public. Now, that can take a lot of different forms, whether that's speaking publicly at a forum like this, or if you're online and you are an online warrior and troublemaker, like myself, not letting comments go, be left alone, at least amongst friends. You do have to be strategic. One of the things that I'll get to eventually is that there's no point in debating someone who denies your basic human dignity. You're not going to change their mind, so you shouldn't waste the time. And then finally, act. It's not good enough just to listen. It's not good enough just to speak, especially when we can't speak, but to actually do things. And those things can be as little as whatever it is that you could do. And that includes things as simple as writing and contacting your reps, not just when something awful is coming down the pipe, as has happened repeatedly over the last couple of years. But also, you have an opportunity with some of our reps, especially in Appleton, to thank them for voting against, in this last session, 5 separate anti-trans bills. Write Tony Evers and thank him for vetoing all of those bills. They need to know that that you have their backs, and we need to know that you have our backs. There's a certain level of fatigue, and anybody who tries to be an activist or speak out knows this well, of being the person in the room that is expected to speak about her experience, about something that is in many ways and often extremely private and personal. So,
Can I ask a follow-up?
yes, you can.
What actions do allies often underestimate or overlook?
So again, I've had some time to think about that, and I think that sometimes we're our own worst enemies, and people in their enthusiasm to be helpful can kind of ruin the moment or ruin your day, right? So it's not, when I say listen, speak, and act, know where you are in that environment. What may seem like help, for example, you look great with either said or unsaid for a trans woman, right? Or if someone has trusted you enough to talk about their experience and don't respond with, oh, I could tell. Both of these things has happened to me. Both of these things have ruined my day for a week. If someone is asking for your help to lift their voice, then don't be the center of that. I think we all have that inclination to want to be the hero by helping like that, and I'm urging you to resist that, and then just to be helpful. I hope that doesn't sound too harsh. We really need your help. Just, over there. Does that make sense?
I'm going to give you a quick break because I have another one for you. Does anyone on the panel want to add?
Yeah, I'll add a few things. One of the biggest challenges we have as a trans community is that, depending whose research you read, only 30% of the population, at best 40, have ever met a trans person. Now, in all likelihood, you have coworkers, family, whatever, who are deeply closeted and you don't know, but they're there. We're everywhere. But I think the issue of inclusion, invitation, and welcome is pivotal. In my own life, as I've become more and more active and public in the Green Bay area, one of the groups that I've gotten funding from our organization is the Greater Green Bay Community Foundation. And within it, they have a thing called the Women's Fund. And many of you know about that. And it's a fund created by the women, primarily in Northeast Wisconsin, to support programs for women and girls. Well, 3 years ago, every June, they have a wonderful garden party for all the women. And fortunately, the director of the foundation invited me to come. I was scared shitless because I wasn't sure and I didn't have the confidence how the women would welcome me. And much to my joy, I knew probably 15 or 20 of them because of different committees, activities that I was with. And now I'm just another one of the women. So please, open your door, extend the invitation. There may be some initial fear. Come up, say hi, find out what amazing people we are.
I'm just gonna throw in. I'm just gonna add one tiny thing, and that's that I, in any work that I do, don't like to think of myself as an ally, but a good conspirator. So, up the ante, make sure that you understand that the things that you're fighting for are affecting you too. I know nobody wants to live in a community that's full of hate, and yes, trans people are awesome. So get to know them, but not in a weird way.
That's a motto.
So, I'd like to add on to what Megan said on the allyship. Now, I know we all know that social media is a really nasty place right now, but I accept the fact that it's our life and blood. I mean, it's basically what the world evolves around it, and a lot of where we are today for all these issues, I think, are because of social media. So, to me, that's how we got here. But to me, that's the solution possibly. And a lot of the messaging, a lot of the transphobic messaging, projection, and damage is actually occurring on social media. So what Megan said, for those who are online, to be another voice, because right now it seems like the other side seems to dominate the messaging, and so so you can't take on the transphobia. But what I do is when there's a transphobic comment, I actually respond to that person. I'm not actually responding to that person. I'm responding to that person. So I assume when people are looking at social media, for every 3 or 4 warriors who are going back and forth, there could be like 100 people just watching what's going on. And I'm assuming that there's neutral people on the fence who are trying to figure out what's going on, what side we're on. So I like to make comments on social media, even responding to transphobia, to set the record straight. And so but then the last thing is, if you want to go out and do that, that would really help us a lot. But the key is to be confident, though, in what you say. For example, I'm not afraid to talk about that. It's okay to give minors puberty blockers and hormones. I'm not afraid to talk about that, but somebody else might not be. You might feel. So what I ask is get to learn more about us and be confident in what is the facts about us. That way, if you're confident, then you can be confident to take on the comments. But I do urge that you do have to be confident and actually believe in what you say, but that can be important too. So that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you.
I have one small thing to add.
You're good. Oh, yes. Oh, of course.
To also add on to what Megan said, specifically the comments about oh, you look great today, is just the very small things that that some people think are being helpful but feel very othering. Again, when I go to the doctor's office and I say, oh, my name's David, they say, oh, is that your chosen name? Instead of, is that that's my name. It's just my name. You don't need to add the adjective of chosen there, saying that kind of it just feels othering, like, oh yeah, we know you're trans, and it just doesn't feel right for me personally.
Isn't it just a dream when they all do the talking? Like, this is so good. All right. But I'm not done. All right, I do have one more for you. Can you share an example of an issue that outsiders may see as small or negotiable, but is actually central to inclusion and participation in public life?
Oh my, I can. So, it is indeed fortuitous that this is the 60th anniversary of the founding of NOW, because it's also the 60th anniversary, about a week ago, of Bobby Gibb running the Boston Marathon. Bobby Gibb was the first woman to run the Boston Marathon. She wasn't actually officially entranced into it, she just ran it. Why does this have to do with anything? Well, I think that the main thing that seems to be negotiable, even by well-intentioned liberals, and I don't know about well-intentioned when I speak of Gavin Newsom, but I will use Gavin as an example, but I also use Pete Buttigieg, who both of them have decided that the participation of trans students in sports is something that we can negotiate. Now, why do I mention Bobby Gibb? In 1965, when the Boston Marathon was being run, women weren't allowed to run in the marathon. And the reason why they weren't allowed to run in any marathon is because there hadn't been any research on women's health and sports and kinesiology. And so it was thought at the time that the most a woman could run safely was about 1.5 miles. There were no training, there were no shoes, there were no outfits. When Bobby Gibb ran the Boston Marathon, she wore her swimsuit, her brother's shorts, and her brother's tennis shoes. I'd like to bring this up because the argument that is usually put forward as common sense, we want to keep men out of women's sports, all of the stuff that is usually said, is predicated on the fact that people assume they know what they're talking about when they're talking about women's sports. And the simple fact is, before we even were to discuss whether or not trans women have an advantage in athletics, which they manifestly do not, and there are plenty of studies, some of which I'm happy to share, that show that they do not, especially before puberty, is that women's sports are not invested in. People don't care about women's sports. Right? Women's bodies, women's health, none of that. Nobody cared about that. And this is used as an excuse. Now, why do I personally care about sports? Well, I'm an athlete. I wasn't. When I was younger, I was a very bookish nerd. But in my 40s, I became a runner and a cyclist and a lifter and played soccer. At 12 years, I played roller derby. And what I learned, two things that I learned from all of those experiences, especially with roller derby, is that there are many sports, shows you that there are many different kinds of women. And when we say trans women can't be part of sports, what we're really saying is anybody who doesn't fit a very specific Western European mold and definition of what a woman is can't participate. When we have these sports bans, one, we're putting women into a box. And two, we are instituting testing that is always invasive and usually wrong, right? As I said at the beginning, I take people at their word, and I'm happy to discuss this. When we start, if people go down this rabbit hole, and I've talked about this at length, both at work and on social media, that the inclusion of trans folks, especially trans students in athletes, is good for their mental health, their well-being, their sense of community. We're talking about a group of people who are already marginalized and feel alone and especially these days threatened, and we're saying they can't have the same opportunities that everybody else has. It's monstrous. And it can seem like it's a trivial issue. And people will say it's a common sense trivial issue, but it is also a back door into other kinds of exclusions that are much more horrifying. As Helen mentioned, this affects us all. So I will not give an inch on trans student athletes.
And my last follow-up was about the matter in school. Is there anything to add?
I guess the only thing that I would add is, again, this may seem like this is trivial in that, and I've been asked this, why should I care if A, I'm not a trans woman, and or B, I'm not an athlete? The assumptions that lie behind trans woman exclusion are that if you are not a delicate flower, you are not a woman. It's the same thing that caused people to accuse Michelle Obama and the Williams sisters of being men, right? People couldn't take the fact that women could actually do things. One of the reasons why Bobby Gibb was the first woman to run in the marathon, the other reason they don't often talk about is that they were afraid that a woman would beat any men. And she ran sub-4, by the way, which if you've run marathons, is pretty sweet, especially at Boston.
Thank you. All right, so Kristen, Martha, and Helen, I have a question for you. Kristen, you'll start. How the conservatives and the laws trans women, how they treat trans women, if it's good to establish what those attacks might involve, emotional, mental, or physical, and how they may make you feel.
Yes, thank you for that question. That's a pretty open-ended question. I could talk for a half hour on it, but I'll keep it to under 5 minutes, I guess. Or 3 minutes if it's a school board meeting, I'll try. What have they done and how do I take it? Well, this has been 10 years in the making, and they're employing this incrementalism. They start out with just bathrooms based on birth certificates, then they turned it into, now they define it based on biologic characteristics. Then they started going after other things. Then they went after kids, care, and now ID docs, passports. And it's really starting to wear on me. I mean, not just as an activist, because I feel sorry for all. I feel I can maybe get by, but now I feel like maybe I can't get by with some of these laws being passed and how we're being treated. And I don't know, we could have another discussion point on why we're here and how we got here today, but the ones that really bother me the most is like the Idaho one with going to jail if you use a bathroom, because I mean, they're obviously trying to control us and our lives, but the thing is, I'm being to retire pretty soon, and I was kind of looking forward to going to Europe and maybe Idaho and some states, and it's like, well, national parks, you can't use the bathroom, and it's like, well, you know, I don't know, I guess if I use the guy's bathroom, I'm going to have a problem, then I'll have to defend myself, but if I use the women's bathroom and get caught, well, then I face jail and stuff, so that really bothered me. I mean, it used to be just, county, government buildings, now they're saying private ones and stuff, and private businesses, so it's like, well, how am I supposed to I'm going to be a prisoner in Illinois in my golden years, and then the other thing that, and this is in the news lately, I'm just going to touch on two things. There's that proposal that they want to have the FBI investigate people like us as extremists, terrorists, and that's really scary if that happens, and the reason it isn't scary is because I could be labeled a terrorist, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but if you remember the Patriot Act, the Patriot Act requires that you want to apply for a loan or a mortgage that you're not on some list. Well, I could be put on some list, so this is really getting out of hand. And I used to thought, well, I can weather this, but the last 2 years has gotten to the point where I don't know what, I'm at my wit's end, and so I don't know how to reverse this, but to answer this question, what are they doing and how does it? It's mentally draining, it's emotionally draining, it's physically, no, but it's wearing on me, and as an activist, I just don't know what to do anymore, and now I don't know, just thought I'd mention those 2 points, that these are getting really serious, and they're getting extreme and to the point where they're just cruel.
But one, I'm sorry, I know I just talked about it, but I do have a follow-up comment, that there are always downstream people realize. And one of these, because of these state level laws that are basically excluding one state after the other, is affecting professional development. It's affected me. I was about to go to a conference this fall. I can't because I am not going to a state where it's not safe for me to go to. And so there will be any conference in Texas or Florida is out of this. As we travel, we have to make decisions based on, can I drive through this state? Can I afford to connect in this airport? And so people are losing out on professional development opportunities, as well as just the ability to freely move around.
That's a good point. Like I might have to go to a conference myself, and I have some trans friends who are airline pilots, and they're afraid to fly in anywhere. They're afraid to fly anywhere, but that's a great point, and I didn't even think of that. Conferences and same with me. Like, well, I try to pick what airport I'm going to fly into now, and so I have to actually. So my whole life revolves around these laws now. Like I said, I'm going to be retired. I like to do some traveling, and professional conferences might come up, and it's like, yeah, good point.
Go ahead. Okay. We had a couple of different things. One, not on. Thank you. I really want to scream, but mic is useful. One of the things I wanted to talk about, because this is one of the things I want to leave you with, is that this isn't going to stop with trans people. We know as feminists, right? They're coming for our voting rights. They're coming for our bodies. They're coming for choice. They already came for choice. Like, don't fool yourselves that cis women aren't next and that gay men aren't next. So first of all, I just want to say that. Terrifying in general. For those of you who know, I have permanent permission to out my wife, but my wife is trans, and I have to worry about her every single second now. She is a confident, charming, friendly person, for those of you who know her. But for her work, she's an actor. She has to fly all the time. She has to go to places like Oklahoma. Because that's where the show she's on is filming. She's in New York. I always feel a little bit safer when she's in New York because it's New York. But we've always said it only takes one asshole to ruin your day. And so one of the things that this climate of fear is creating is that there are a lot of people who are emboldened by the legislative shit, by all of the talk. Sorry, I'm from Brooklyn originally, I'm gonna curse. There's so much overwhelming news and the constant legislative hacking away at whether it's kids on hormones or women in sports, all of these bullshit issues that are meant to scare everybody. And I feel like people should be scared, but more people should be scared than just trans people. And I don't think we're responding with enough anything, ever, right? I mean, this is a thing that we're going to see our rights chipped away at over and over again. If you haven't seen all the conversations now about how women shouldn't vote, the women voting ruined the whole country. That comes up every 7 years. I get to the older. The other thing I wanted to mention is I see some white hair in the room, so I'm going to guess that some of you know the phrase biology is not destiny. What the fuck happened to that? Like, where are we? Why are we still falling for these ridiculous arguments about who a woman is or isn't based on biology? We already said that's not a good way to determine how people are. And so to remember that, when we talk about gender and sex and ID and all of this stuff, these are all categories that are created to put one set of people in charge and make everybody else secondary or other, right? So the reason that the categories exist, this is true of race, this is true of gender, this is right, all of these different things. And it's just incredibly frustrating. So some of the smartest people I know are like, well, I can understand someone being transgender, but people don't really change sex. Yes, they do. That's absolutely medically possible. I could go into all of the details for how that's possible. But the other thing to remember is that when you show someone an ID, how many people here remember when race was actually on the driver's licenses in Wisconsin? Okay, that doesn't exist anymore because you know what? It's a category that falls apart. And I hope someday, maybe we'll get to the point where retinal scans or something like that, but gender markers are supposed to indicate different things. What a gender marker does on a birth certificate is so different from what it does on a driver's license or a passport, right? It's supposed to reflect who you are. What governmental agency is controlling that form of identity often is a reflection of what that government agency does. It has nothing to do with the person who holds the ID, right? This is all governance that is fucking with people because it can. And that's just honestly constantly frustrating. The other thing I will say is that for a lot of cis women, this assumption, right, that it's our bodies that make us women, we know also that's not true, right? Simone de Beauvoir, her famous quote, sorry, I used to teach feminist theory a lot, but you know, one is not born a woman but becomes one. Like women live in the world and that's how you become a woman. The biological argument has been such bullshit for so long. If those of you have not caught up with that stuff, you don't have to be able to read like things about DNA and genetic markers and all of the stuff that I could give you a million articles about. Trust the people who've been doing trans theory and gender theory for a long time. This argument has been resolved. There is no legal definition of woman that holds up in any circumstance, and almost in even the most specific ones. So keep that in mind. We don't know, we can't define what a woman is. And so the idea that someone is deciding, especially haters, are deciding who gets to be a woman, who's feminine enough to be a woman, who upholds that, you know, Eurocentric model. I would like to remind everybody, it's a very white room. But all of the sort of models, right, of how women are supposed to be just fall apart for most of us. And when it comes to things like the bathroom laws, who do you think gets arrested for going into women's rooms the most? Masculine cis women, almost invariably. So even all of that, the other thing I want to point out with the bathrooms in particular, trans people are so much more likely to experience violence in a bathroom. Cis people do not experience violence from trans people. Trans people experience violence from cis people in bathrooms. So to keep that in mind, who is actually affected, who I have to worry about. And I will tell you from experience, every time there's a piece of news, like your trans friends are not okay. I mean, maybe some of you don't know any trans people, which I find unbelievable. I think I just kept all the trans people for myself. So everybody else meet some more people. But it's really incredible to watch other people argue, whether it's, you know, these arguments about sports or kids and hormones or whatever, to be able to say, well, abstractly, well, let's have a debate. It's utter and complete bullshit. Like, trans people know that they're trans. Trans people know who they are. Trust them. We trust everybody else to tell you who they are. Yeah, just more, please, more. I feel like cis women, again, we know what it took to get to where we are. And if you don't understand that these fights against trans people are just a fight against all of us, please smell the coffee.
I don't know what to add, but I will. This is just, it is so real with the trans community when we have our first Thursday gatherings and the stories that people share of how they were developing confidence in their authentic selves and beginning to broaden their willingness to risk, to step further out of the closet. And the current atmosphere is forcing many of them to retreat, to go back, to not make waves, for fear if we make waves, we'll be on someone's list. The Department of Justice labeled trans activists as nihilistic extremist terrorists. I don't know, I don't think that's me. Okay. Last week, the Department of Justice submitted a request to expand its budget to begin to seek out and create a database of transgender people. This question, and Helen already articulated it well, of, even what's a trans person? It's a big umbrella. There's a whole spectrum, gamut. We were raised in a binary system, kind of like the light switch, male up, female down, okay? Well, the truth is that it's a dimmer switch that actually goes sideways. Just as there are infinite numbers of ways for a man to be a man, or a woman to be a woman, it is the same for trans people. We have, every month when we gather, 2 to 4 people who have never been out of their houses before, presenting as their authentic self. And when they come in and they claim that space, the explosion of trans joy is really a treat and a gift to behold. And instead of enjoying that gift and the amazing things that trans people can bring, because we move beyond the boundaries of society. Why is it that many queer people are in the arts? Because it's a space where we can express that creativity and joy. And yet, I got an email just 2 weeks ago from a parent who was very active with our trans youth group that volunteers for everything, and I had sent her a note. We have a LGBTQ high school prom that we sponsor, and she's always been a great supporter, and I said, well, I'm looking forward to it. And she said, can't do it this year. We bought some property in Canada, and we're building a house. And to safeguard and provide a safe space for my children, we'll be moving there this summer, so I can't help. One study I saw said there are at least 40,000 trans people who have moved in the last year out of states and seeking places where they can be safe. And I am amazed at not amazed, at the creativity of our obnoxious legislators in coming up with new ways to try to erase us. When we look at databases, when we look at things like the Stonewall Monument, information to banning books in libraries, and when these initiatives are legislatively introduced, we pair a lot with Fair Wisconsin to try to monitor those things and to show up, to speak out. But what happens is, like 4 o'clock on a Tuesday, they announce that the following day at 10 o'clock, they're having a hearing on a bill. And then they stack the deck for the first 8 hours of hearings with self-appointed dis and misinformation. Unfortunately for them, we're pretty obnoxious too. And we hang in there. And we have spoken out. And we need more of you to support those initiatives. So I'll stop rambling.
All right. I take 2 questions, and then we'll move on to the last final rounds, okay? I know, Daisy, you're like dying to get your question. All right, 2 questions. Anyone have something for one of the panelists that you want to ask? Yes?
One of the panelists talked about the idea that we want to make sure that we're really well informed when we go online and respond to somebody. What are some good sources for us to become more informed, that we can trust are really sharing accurate information?
In 2 to 3 minutes, who can answer that question?
Oh, yeah, Martha. Get it.
Call us. The Bay Area Council on Gender Diversity. Second thing I would say is listen. Cornell College did a study of 30 medical and psychological associations in the United States, and they found that 29 of the 30 provide support for gender-affirming care. Things like the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association. Listen to those people, go online, use Google, and ask for evidence-based proof. Organizations like the Trevor Project, PFLAG has an amazing array of responsible resources. Test out that mis and disinformation. Do not listen to the Health and Human Services. It is sick and mind-boggling how they have had predetermined outcomes and then sought out people who have been discredited within the major professional associations to, quote, support those studies. HHS put out a 400-page document thinking that that was going to be really impressive. Of course, when they put it out, the people who wrote it refused to put their names to it because they knew they would be beaten up. I can go on and on about the ridiculous, but please do check with the major American Medical Association, Trevor Project, PFLAG. I'm sure I'm missing some other key ones.
I have to say this because of where we are. Talk to your librarians. I'm sure they all have recommendations. But yeah, I mean, there's also just a million blogs, a million books that have bibliographies in them. Like, when I was first writing it, this is 20-something years ago, writing my book, I literally read almost everything that was available on transness. Almost everything. Now, I can't keep up with what's getting published in a week. So, keep that in mind. There's so much information. There's books to read, there's videos, there's YouTubers, there's whatever version of that you want. Whether it's simplified versions or complex, or if you want to read scholarship, there is so much out there. 20 years ago, I could say, okay, it might have been hard to find information. It is not anymore.
I lied. You get one question. Okay. You can.
To add one, internet's resource that's, I think, not too bogged down in the minutia, but it has good calls to action and a good overview of legislation, and that's Aaron in the Morning. Aaron in the Morning Substack, reliable place to get an immediate response. And I just had a couple while I've been sitting here, alerts about legislative efforts or efforts at Texas Tech. Those are pretty horrifying. But she publishes, for example, it's a terrible, I don't want to use this analogy, but I'm going to just so that you can understand it. Essentially, the Trans Green Book, which is where we can travel in the United States, and a map that gets updated every year, and where we can live, and others. So it's ERIN in the Morning, Substack, and a website, and support her work.
Well, Human Rights Campaign, their website has everything on gender-affirming care, other topics as well. So it's a good question. It's to understand it and be confident and understand because it's important. Yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you. All right, Daisy. I gave you 2 key points. Would you like to pick one to talk about, or you can talk about them both, and then just let us know which one you're going to use. Okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
So, one of them was already answered pretty heavily by Helen. I kind of stole my thunder there a little bit. Something. It's okay. I want to speak about the distinction between sex and gender and why there really isn't much of a distinction at all, along with the terms biological man and biological women. Again, Helen went into great detail about this. But when you really think about sex and gender, the big distinction is gender is social, sex is biological. That falls apart kind of with any scrutiny, because what does that really mean, right? specifically when referring to sex here. Let's say, again with the question, how do we define what a woman is? Well, we can't. If we're talking about biology, well, let's say chromosomes. Well, those don't really work because I don't think anyone here has been karyotyped and knows what the chromosome makeup is. And even if that were like the case and everyone knew what the chromosomes were, that doesn't really work because chromosomes don't always determine sexual characteristics, right? A cisgender woman could have XY chromosomes and just not know it. A lot of them do. We could go to secondary sex characteristics, that doesn't work either because with HRT and hormones, we can develop those and we can change those. If we go to genitalia, that doesn't really work either because, first off, I don't think anyone wants to be defined by having a uterus or not having a uterus, but it falls apart because not everyone is even like born with those characteristics, right? Some people are born with both, some people are born with neither. This is what we refer to as intersex, which is not the same thing as being transgender. But when you use terms like biological man and biological woman, they just simply don't work. And trying to use gender and sex as distinct things that are completely separate just falls apart. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is the lack of pushback against anti-trans narratives in the media. When let's say, I don't know, like Fox News or something, as an example, talks about like, oh, they're pushing to put men and women's sports. A lot of other like more liberal news outlets, I don't really see a lot of pushback unless it's from a trans reporter or a trans writer, right? And we see again with like, you know, some like liberal like Democrats, like again, you say Gavin Newsom and Pete Buttigieg, not enough pushback there. I think, what was the exact quote Gavin Newsom said that we should focus on more like normal things and not on pronouns, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, but it's the willingness to cede this ground that I really struggle with here, because it's seen as a toxic issue now because of the lack of pushback over the past 10 years, right? And I'm rambling a bit, but I feel like in day-to-day life, I think it's very important to push back on these narratives. Men and women's sports, shut up, frankly, please. We can't seek ground on these issues.
Thank you.
I think a lot of this might be money because the media, you know, what's more fun? A child was had their, you know, received mutilation surgery, or oh, trans kid is doing great and happy now. I mean, I think part of it is that the media has more fun with the dark side, the lies, than the success stories. So I mean, but yeah, that's good. Yeah, I really miss the days. North Carolina HB2 10 years ago, the whole country was on our side. Everybody pushed back. Well, the sports organizations were on our side. All the businesses were on our side. Musicians, I mean, the whole world was on our side. And then what happened 10 years later? Now we're here. So now, like you said, now it's toxic. It's like, I mean, I wish we could reverse that somehow. And I don't know what the answer is. Just so more people have to just brave up. You know, like that one coffee shop took down their pride flags, but then the public pushed back, and then they put them back up again. I mean, there probably is pathways, but it just takes people making noise. So.
Thank you. All right, Megan, I have one for you. What guidance will you give organizations or advocates who believe they are supportive, but may not yet understand which issues are non-negotiable for real inclusion?
Okay, thank you. I will try and be brief because I think I've covered most of what I wanted to say. But it boils down to just this: push until it gives. There is, as has been said by multiple people, no ground to see. I will die on this hill, in other words. And when I think about, for example, reproductive rights and how we went down this road, the arguments that I would get into with family members, with friends, my position was, still is, I make no exception. It is a woman's choice. You stay out of it. And you don't start quibbling about weeks. You don't start quibbling about this exception or that exception. The moment you go down that hill, the moment we took that bait from the right, Roe was dead eventually. And the same thing is happening here. So push to what gives, speak up, and true, genuine allies are people who are willing to take the bullets that are aimed at us. And one of those bullets that are coming for you, you are a genuine ally, to be prepared to be accused of being one of us. But how awesome is that? Guess we're pretty honest. I have not met many people who are as brave and as empathetic. I know this is self-serving, but still, it's true. As trans people, we often go through a lot and still come out of it somehow, despite it all, with our humanity, most of us, intact.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to go one round question. Martha, I'm going to start with you. Each of our panelists is going to do this. Is there anything left for you top of mind? And then I'd like you to share what gives you hope right now.
Well, I'll throw you a curve in terms of top of my mind. Part of my life story, which I haven't had a chance to share, is I spent 42 years working for the Catholic Church, living in the closet. And it's when I retired that we started to make some progress. That being said, I still believe, as I have my whole life, in the importance of spirituality and being able to tap into one's higher power, one's order, and trust it. And even within the Catholic Church, there are cracks in the foundation. And an example of that crack was in September of 24. I and 3 other Catholic trans women met Pope Francis on the steps of St. Peter's. And there is a dialogue. And recently there were several meetings with LGBTQ people and bishops to have an honest dialogue. I love giving a talk that I've now given in a couple of churches, which basically has the theme, don't let organized religion get in the way of living your faith.
So can we repeat that question?
Sure. It would be anything left top of mind. And then what gives you hope right now?
Top of mind first is that you're listening to the fear and anger and frustration in this room of people who have a lot of privilege in the world. So try to imagine what it's like for the young folks, for trans people of color, for people who are immigrants, for all of the people who don't have access to education, to safety, who have automatically bad relationships with government agencies and the police. If it's scary, that I have 15 friends who have left the country already. They're either in Canada or Costa Rica or Mexico, a couple going to Ireland because they could. And that's the people who can. Some people certainly, and Enrico Ramos said to me recently, was like, I can't imagine doing anything but staying and fighting. Enrico runs Diverse and Resilient, so that is who is fighting. And so I would say that's, and Enrico's also a former student, which I like to boast about. But I think that's what gives me hopes. It's not just trans youth, it's all of the ways that trans people are resilient. And I also have a deep belief that the majority of people at this point understand that trans rights are human rights, that trans women are women, but we have to beat back all the negativity. So, midterms.
To what you said, the everyone else. I guess what I like to see more, and this is just more wishful thinking, but maybe the others could see if they agree with me. I'm not seeing enough alliance from our medical communities lately, you know, like the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics. And I'm gonna just tell a quick story about that, because there's 2.8 million of us, 2 million are adults, and we all pretty much have the same stories. And that story is this. I'm 60 years old, okay? I realized, I was 7 years old when I suspected I was some kind of a trans person. I had this, I should be female or girl, and it hit me when I was 7 years old. I'm here in Wisconsin, and I had no idea what was going on with me. I had no idea. And I just, watching Saturday morning cartoons really bothered me, and being in school. And I carried this all through the 90s, and I just kept it to myself. I just shrugged it off as being, well, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I feel this way. So I just kind of learned to ignore it, but it gnawed away me all these years. Well, then in the 90s, the internet came out, and I started researching it, and I started realizing, well, maybe I'm one of these trans people. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. And then as time went on, it just kept gnawing away at me. So basically, the medical community had all the Benjamin standards have been around since 100 years. All these. And I go, wow, they've been dealing with people like me for a long time. I didn't even realize it. They have standards of care, and ways to characterize us, to diagnose me. And it took several months. We didn't talk about that gatekeeper mentality, but you used to have to go through these gatekeeper hoops and I was part of that period where it was just switching, and it's like, 6 months of visits and all kinds of stuff. And well, they created this. The American Medical Association, said hormones is okay. The American Psychology said this is what works. They created all this stuff, and it works. I feel great. My gender dysphoria is gone. I haven't been happier since I transitioned. But now all this transphobia has got me real like bummed out. So what I'm getting at is I wish that they could come back to our rescue again. Survey. There's 2 million. I think the story I just told. I think they all had the same story. We knew when we were kids. There is such thing as a trans kid. I wasn't taught it. I wasn't groomed. It wasn't because they asked for porn. I figured out all on my own. In the 70s, there was nothing. There was no internet. So I'd like to see, I wish they just, I wish they could stick up for us again, but I think they're afraid. And, well, what gives me hope, and this really was really cool. Everybody knows about the new Richmond, Wisconsin situation, I'm assuming. So every once in a while in Wisconsin, a trans kid is spotted, in the school using a bathroom or something, and maybe it takes a few months or a few years before they make it big. Well, New Richmond over by Polk County, over close to the Twin Cities, they had an incident that started maybe 3 to 4 months ago. Your usual school board meetings and stuff, and then Moms for Liberty decided school board elections happened. Well, here's what gives me hope is, a bunch of kids in that school started an organization. They actually created an organization called New Richmond Students Against Moms for Liberty. It's like, wow. I wasn't sure if kids were on our side. For sure. I got made some messages about kids in schools, but then I heard about this. Oh my God, this is great! And now they formed a PAC. They actually registered with the state of Wisconsin. They're actually online on that ethnicity site, and they're actually collecting money. And then they created signs, they canvassed and stuff. And I think that really gave me hope. I was really down on my luck and really feeling. But these group of kids started, and they're still, keeping themselves active for next. So this is great. In Wisconsin, a group of kids started an organization called NR Against Moms for Liberty. And I was like, yes! That really fired me up. So thank you.
So I just like to reflect just a little bit going up that I Barry Gibbs
Louder. Yeah, louder.
I am also 60, and I knew when I was 4. I knew by the time I was in school that this was a bad thing, because I was told when I told a friend that they were going to tell the nuns that I'd be in trouble, as you sometimes are when you're being told on by the nuns. And so if you want to know, have an inkling of what it's like to grow up trans, it's like being Winston Smith from 1984. You feel like you're constantly surveilled. Once you've tweaked that this isn't something that people accept, you're constantly on your guard. And that was my childhood, my teenage years, my 20s, and some of my 30s. So that happily there's a way out, and there's happiness and freedom with that. This work is important and it works. A year ago, I was testifying against one of these bills. I think it was the sports ban, in fact. And it was the usual thing where they set up hours of people speaking against it, and then we could speak for it. And there was a viral clip of this one guy, this sweetheart, who had come there to speak out against it, and then watched all of us talk for it, for the trans exclusion bill in sports and a bathroom bill. And when it was his turn to come up and speak, he apologized to the trans community and said that he learned that he was wrong, and that he recognized that this was lived experience of other people. And so that's why you do this work, is that one person at a time, if that's what it takes.
Thank you. And Davey?
Just kind of going off these two right here, speaking on my experience as a trans person and growing up, I didn't really know what being trans was, and I didn't really know that's a thing that you could do, could be. So I grew up around the time of puberty. From then on, I just had this sense of wrongness with myself, that I wasn't like doing myself right. Does that make sense? And it didn't matter what I tried to do, like maybe try socializing more, maybe try dressing different. None of it was really working until it clicked for me. I'm not a man. And then it all just made sense to me. And you know, I came out like maybe 3 years ago now to some close friends. And the funny story is that they all knew before I did, which, according to some of my friends who are also trans women, is pretty common amongst them. Like, oh yeah, my best friend knew before I did. They kept pointing out to me, I just didn't listen. But the thing that gives me hope right now is the fact that there is this growing resistance to anti-trans legislation, anti-trans sentiment around the country, specifically with grassroots organizing. Again, Hate Free Out of Gay Me, I was very attracted to them because last year for Trans Day Visibility, they held this little event that Now is at actually. Someone, I forget who, someone from Now was just going around giving out boxes of Girl Scout cookies. That was you? They were great. I shared them with my friends. And I was reading about Hate Free Out of Gay Me, and they were giving out just a bunch of free pamphlets on DIY HRT. I'm like, oh, these guys know what's up, right? And the fact that it was something this close to me, physically, because I live in Little Chute, and the fact that it was in my county, and it's something I can just join and do. And that was really eye-opening for me, and being able to work on this and be able to organize and help push forward trans rights, it gives me a lot of hope.
Nice. Can we give everybody a round of applause? Maybe one more. Is there a question for one of our panelists? So many eyes darting. Yes.
I know that it's been mentioned, sorry, I'm losing my voice, younger people and the challenges that they're facing right now. I've worked in the community, I've worked with a lot of families, adults, parents and kids. I have friends, I have neighbors, where they don't have that safe place, they don't have the family that supports them, they don't have the place where they can be seen and be themselves. And I have exhausted, it's you have a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid that I could find a mental health therapist, but I can't find education for the parents. or I can't find a support group that fits the parents or the kids. Like there's no parent support or education out there. So I'm very curious what kind of advice you have or what kind of knowledge you have around that hands-on direct support for families.
The old school version, go online. When I was dating somebody who was trans and I didn't know anybody else who was, I started creating my own groups, and so that's what got me into all of this. But that's one of the things, is that there's plenty of active, awesome, accepting parents of trans kids out there. We used to have a chapter locally of TNET, which is the trans division of PFLAG, and I know there are active parents in the community. So, bug me, I can put up a post on Facebook. Not everybody wants to be known anymore. This chilling effect is, but parents are some of the most amazing advocates out there. So I would say that would be one thing that you could do. Try to find some of the other groups. And Fair Wisconsin might have other resources as well, so yeah.
I would also, we have a group with the Bay Area Council, but the other resource for parents are the social workers, guidance counselors in the schools, who especially work with GSA groups, and often they can hook you up with other parents. Our organization has like 2 or 3 what we call the all community gatherings. The big one is coming up on August 9th, and if you have families with trans kids or trans persons, we just opened, originally when we organized the picnic, it was for parents and kids and their families, and we hold it at Bay Beach, and we got like 60, 70 people. Last year, we made the decision based on input from the adult trans community that they wanted a picnic. And so we figured, well, all right, we already have this, and it was an amazing gathering. We had 150 people show up that the trans adults could model, especially for the parents of trans kids who were fearful that their kids would all grow up to be drag queens. Not that there's anything wrong with drag queens. And it was great for the kids to see the adults, and that interaction and games and fun we had. One of my favorite stories, we had 2 grandmothers come with their 2 trans grandkids, because they wanted to make sure that those kids knew they were not alone. And whatever we can do to offer those opportunities, we need to do it.
All right, that is a wrap. Thank you for trusting me and putting up with all my emails.
Doing the action.
We're short of, the panel
We
is
have
so
a talk.
Okay,
amazing.
sorry about the pause. We had a lot more that we could have covered for everyone, but the panel was so awesome that we did that instead. So since I have the mic, I have a chance to personally thank each of you up front here for sharing, for your wisdom, for your courage, for just being here and educating us, your willingness to talk to, actually there are people of all types here, but it's a whole bunch of, as you call it, cisgender women here, and the education has been invaluable. So thank you. I think it was you, Megan, who talked about legislative action, And we are prepared for that. So our VP of Action, Rachel, will come up and lead us.
And Corey.
And Corey, our Legislative Director.
And yeah.
So it is time for action, and Megan, I wrote this before I came here. Actually, Rachel wrote it. So you'll see that it's everything you talked about.
I did talk to Megan.
There's so much to sift through these days. In the last month, Governor Evers vetoed several bills that made it through both the Assembly and the Senate of our state legislature. And these are pretty boilerplate items. They're being introduced across the country. It's not just our state, okay? Our bills that were vetoed because of Governor Evers, I'm just going to read the titles: Anti-Trans Sports Bill for K-12, and Anti-Trans Sports Bill for College, Denying Preferred Names and Pronouns in Schools, Trans Youth Gender Affirming Care Ban, and lawsuits regarding gender affirming care. This is the tip of the iceberg. There is more legislative activity across the country that we're keeping an eye on. And just to echo what Helen indicated, it's not just trans that these bills impact. I saw a TikTok earlier today of a woman with disabilities who said that anti-trans legislation targeting bathrooms hurts people with disabilities, and why might that be? There's often one stall. If the stall is out of order, where do they go? They have to go wherever they can, right? So that might mean using a different gendered bathroom. And the mask men thing, the mask female thing, huge. So just remember that if we don't say anything, it's silence is complicity, and we don't want to be complicit. If you give an inch, they will take a mile.
All right, so as you know, we always want to do action. We want to learn, we want to get angry, get inspired, and we want to do something. So tonight, what we're going to do, I'm going to be passing out postcards and pens. So first of all, we have to, as was mentioned by Megan earlier, we have to encourage people who are doing the right thing. So we're going to ask you guys to write a postcard to Evers and thank him for his veto efforts. And then we're going to write our state senators and our state representatives. And if you don't know who yours are, you can scan the QR code and you'll be able to input your address and get your people, okay? If you're from this area, like Cabral, Cabral Cabrera, sorry. Anyway, we can help you if you don't know who you're sending them to. You don't need their address. I will take care of all that afterwards, okay? So you just need to write a message and then leave them on the table, okay? So thank you so much.
And if your rep is a Democrat or your senator could be a Democrat, the message is thank you for voting against. It's pretty simple, party line.
Yeah.
So I probably can't just write "fuck you, Ron Johnson."
This is all state level.
Yeah, we're doing state level, but we're doing the message. So it's always
That's a great note to end the live stream on.
What?
No, it's saying I'm not human.